Hello, hi, and welcome to another episode of Wellness in the Workplace. My name is Mbali Mziane and I am your host. Wellness in the Workplace is a podcast that aims to equip new and experienced professionals with the tools and insights to navigate challenging workplace dynamics. If you are an expectant mother, or you're currently on maternity leave, or maybe you're a team leader and you're looking to find ways on how you can better support some of your team members who are going onto their maternity journey, then this episode is for you. I am in conversation today with Farai Ntuli. She is a strategy manager at Accenture South Africa. She is an MC, a moderator, a facilitator, and a new title to her list of accolades is a mom. She's a mother to a baby boy, and we'll be in conversation with her today about navigating maternity leave. I first want to start off by welcoming you to the podcast. Welcome to Wellness in the Workplace.
Thank you so much, Mbali, for having me here. And I must say, I really appreciate that your podcast exists. I think so many people are expected to know how to navigate the workplace. But if you've never known, if you're the first in your family, even if you're not the first in your family, having such a podcast is such a critical tool. So well done to you on such an incredible initiative.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, that's pretty much the ethos behind the podcast, right? That I had to navigate a lot of the stuff by myself. And I realized that I didn't have the resources or the tools to refer to. And so we're here creating something for people like us. And yeah, I want to go straight into our topic today. Yes. I mean, I saw a couple of posts of yours on LinkedIn. I think you had written one about how your organization had supported you during your pregnancy journey. Then you wrote one about your maternity leave. And as you were transitioning back into the workplace, you know, you were sharing a bit of that. So you've been quite vocal and open about that. And I was like, okay, we need to have a conversation about this. Yeah. So let's talk maybe a bit about your background in terms of who Farai is and your journey up to being maybe a mother. I mean, it's a long journey, but we can talk about that.
Super. And yeah, really appreciate the question. So I am the Africa Livelihoods and Education Lead at Accenture Development Partnerships. And what that means is that I work with clients across the globe, some NGOs, foundations, development organizations, to help them on initiatives that are related to employment, entrepreneurship, or education on the continent. Sure. And I really love what I do. I think that, you know, Africa, it's no secret, we've got the largest youth population in the world. And a lot of economists are seeing this as an economic burden, but it should be an economic opportunity. You've got a large working age population that can contribute to development, that can drive innovation. But we're missing the mark in terms of how to turn that into an economic opportunity. Sure. And I'm loving the work I do with clients, with governments, private sector on how do we equip young people with the tools and skills to be economically empowered, but how do we also create jobs or entrepreneurial pathways for their empowerment? Sure. So that's what I do on a daily basis, and I'm glad because it's my passion. Yes. As you mentioned, I also do MC and moderate for different organizations and corporates. I sit on a number of boards as well. I sit on the Skills Africa Alliance or the Africa Skills Alliance boards, as well as Scouts SA. Both organizations aligned to my passion. Sure. And recently started two initiatives. One was Her Horizon, which is a network that exists to advance women's career progression. And we do that through peer mentorship, through coaching, through networking as well. And it's really about creating spaces for young women to thrive in their careers. And another initiative really close to my heart is one that we founded with my husband called Msingi Imara, which is all about creating a healthy space for couples to build strong foundations. Sure. In the 21st century, we are bombarded with relationship failures, with microwave relationships, with toxic relationships. Sure. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so we created a space where couples can be inspired by other couples, but get access to services that can build them. The latter part of your question, which is how did I end up on this journey to motherhood? It's so interesting. And without going down a long journey, I mean, I'm grateful to have met my husband because before him, I did not want to get married. I did not want to have kids.
Sure.
My goal was to be a really rich auntie with a lot of cute chihuahuas and so much money that whenever I come to family gatherings,
Yes.
I just dish money and can sit
Yes.
and enjoy my moe. That was my goal.
Yeah.
Some realities of that can still exist.
Yes.
But I think in terms of meeting my husband, it really changed my perspective. And I saw that actually I do want to have a family. I do want to get married. And with a lot of planning in our own journey, we then mapped out when we would get married, when we would want to have a child. And I'm so grateful to God that we have a beautiful baby boy who's 9 months today.
Sure.
And we didn't have the easiest pregnancy. So every time I see him, it's a reminder of just how incredible God has been in our journey. But I'm grateful to have had a really smooth maternity transition.
Sure.
A smooth maternity leave. Of course, maternity leave is tough. But I mean smooth in the sense of the support that I received.
Yes. Yes.
And I think the re-entry into the workplace, which I know we'll touch on, hasn't been the easiest. And I often feel that is, of course, because work comes with pressure naturally, but also what pressure am I putting on myself? And I think I've had to learn some hard lessons about what does being a working mom look like. But I'm grateful to be a working mom. It's made me more efficient in ways that I would have never imagined. And grateful to be able to unpack it with you today.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, off the air, we were just talking about, how pregnancy is probably one of the things that you only really find out about how to navigate once you're in that situation.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit more about what that looked like, for you as a working expectant mother.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, I think we have to start at that point you find out you're pregnant. And so when you find out you're pregnant, I had to start researching, when do I inform my employer? And doctors would always advise, wait until the first trimester is done, because the first trimester is the most complex one. That's where we have miscarriages taking place, threatened miscarriages, and those are a lot more common than people think. And I do think that on its own can be a whole other podcast in terms of deep diving into that.
Sure.
And so with the guidance from our doctor, we waited until the first trimester was done and we're in the clear. And with that, we then planned with hubby to say, okay, when do we inform the workplace? So when do I inform my workplace? When does he inform his workplace?
Sure.
Because that parental leave for dads is so important as well in terms of them being present. That on its own is another topic, because we need way more parental leave for dads, but that we can get into at a later stage. So I did a lot of research in terms of when do women usually inform their employers. The Basic Conditions of Employment Act states that you have to inform your employer 4 months before your due date, and that's to allow for effective transition planning.
Yes.
There are some books that would advise after the first trimester. There's some books that advise just wait for that 4-month mark. There's some books that say when you start showing. What I felt was important was to say after the first trimester would be good, because we are in the clear. And because I'm in the office at least twice a week, I don't want my employer to start asking questions. I want that it's quite open and transparent.
Yes.
So I sat down with my employer and said, I am actually expecting, but I sat down with her with the plan to say, this is my due date. This is when I want to take maternity leave from. And I know that the company policy, which I'd read up on, says that my maternity leave is 4 months paid, but I want to take 6 months.
Sure.
So I will use my leave days. And I'm such a workaholic that I had so many leave days.
Sure.
I want to convert all of those so that I've got a 6-month maternity leave. I will give birth in July and I will be back in January. And so sitting down with the plan was really important.
Sure.
It's because if you don't, your employer can dictate, okay, when you're back, okay, great, because it's 4 months, you'll then be back in November. And I was like, no.
Yes.
I've calculated based on my leave days, I want to take until this time. So I think that first employer meeting when you inform your employer is so important. It shouldn't just be, of course, based on your working conditions. I don't think it should just be an email. I think having a virtual discussion or a physical discussion is important. And then what I did was to then follow it up with an email where I included HR as well to say, this is my, so I am pregnant. This will be when I'm on maternity leave. This is my expected due date. I want to take 6 months. I'll be back in work in Jan.
Yes.
And I even said, in this time where I'm expecting, I don't want to be treated any differently. I know that it is, sometimes people don't do it maliciously.
Yeah.
They would say, Farai's expecting, we can't give her a lot of work. But that frustrates Farai, who loves to work. And so I made it clear in my email to say, I know I'm expecting, and sometimes out of goodness, you may want to give me less work. Please don't do that, because it'll frustrate my type A personality.
Sure.
Let me keep up with the work I have. When it comes to June is when I'll start dropping the work a bit, also based on what the doctor's advising me, so that when it comes to my maternity leave, then I'm completely done and the handover has been smooth.
Yeah. So you touched on a number of valid points there, right? That the transition into maternity is a people conversation. It's a policy procedure conversation based on the employer and the organization that you work for. And then it's also a legal conversation in terms of what you are rightfully entitled to, given, South African Basic Conditions of Employment Acts, right? And I think when we talk about maternity leave, we need to keep those in mind and try to contextualize that. So I want to talk a little bit more about the people element of it. And you spoke about speaking to your employer, and I'm assuming that would be, a team leader or a supervisor or a manager. And then you also mentioned HR.
Yeah.
You are also client facing.
Yeah.
You had clients that you need to manage. What did that look like?
Yeah. 2 words, maternity plan.
Okay.
So you must create a detailed maternity plan. I'm such a planner. Our wedding was on Excel. So I created a detailed maternity plan on Excel.
Okay.
On that maternity plan, highlighting the dates that I spoke about. So when am I due? When will I take maternity leave? When does my maternity leave technically end? When does my leave start? And when will I be back in office? I then also, because I'm client facing, as you mentioned, wrote out who are the current clients where I'm managing different projects? What's the end date for these projects? Is it before I take maternity leave? Is it after? If it's after, who do I have in line who will continue running the project in my absence? And when do I want to inform that client? For business development, which is a core part of my role as well, what's currently in the pipeline? What stage are we on? And who will then continue running and chasing after this client while I'm on maternity leave?
Sure.
I also lead a team, so for different team members, when do I have check-ins with them? What is it that we discuss? Who will take over those responsibilities? And for team meetings that I lead or coordinate, what are the meetings we have? When do they take place? Who will take over? So a detailed maternity plan is so important because that keeps all of your stakeholders aware of what your movements are and what that transition plan looks like. When you speak to your employer, in my case, it was my Africa lead. It was to share, this is the maternity plan. What do you have planned? Do you want to get in another manager that can take over from me in this time?
Sure.
Is there a colleague within the team that you feel can do this? And I feel that you have to also put the onus on the employer to a certain extent, or else it just becomes the expectant mom show.
Yes.
And some of those responsibilities are not yours. I feel when you've drafted your plan, you share it with your lead or your employer. It's up to them to say, okay, based on what you've shared, we'll get in another person, or it'll be another team member. They must provide you with the name that you can do your handover to. I found that in some cases that process took really long on our side, and I started to get really anxious.
Sure.
And something my people lead, who is like my sponsor in the business, said to me is, certain things are not your responsibility. You create the plan. Employers should tell you who to do the handover to. If there's no handover that takes place, that's not within your scope. That's not within your ambit. You've done what you needed to do. So definitely have that maternity plan as detailed as possible to manage as many stakeholders as possible. An interesting story just to share with that maternity plan is that I shared it before, but I guess when people are so busy, they don't always notice.
Yes.
And then some stage in June, I got a message from HR, why are you still working? I'm like, no, according to my maternity plan, I will keep working until I think it was the 15th of June. They're like, but you give birth on the 25th. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still feeling fine. They're like, no. Policy says that you should stop working a month before your due date.
Sure.
So wrap up this Friday, you need to stop working. And it's so interesting because when I wrote my maternity plan initially, I was like, I want to keep working until the 15th. When HR contacted me, I was so relieved. There's a time in your pregnancy where you're just over it. You were like, actually, I needed this time. And so I think when you create that maternity plan, you manage the people component really well.
Sure.
And I must say, with my clients, one thing I was worried about, and I feel like as professional women we worry, is will I still have my clients when I get back? Will they still know that Farai is your go-to person? And if there's any mom that is stressed about that, Mama, I give you the assurance that for as long as you've delivered exceptional work, you will be remembered.
Sure.
I had my clients that were so excited for me. Some of my clients are like, girl, you need to stop working now. Go have that baby.
Yes.
Because sometimes in a Teams meeting, I'd stand and they'd be like, go have that baby.
Yes.
I had clients contacting me in November to be like, just confirming, are you back in Jan?
Yes.
We'd really love your perspective here. And I had to be like, yes, I'm back in Jan.
Yeah.
Contact X, Y, and Z. She can assist you.
Yes.
And since being back, those clients have come to me. I haven't lost any of those relationships. And so for as long as you've delivered exceptional work to your clients, you don't have to worry.
Sure. Boundaries, right? I mean, you spoke about knowing where you start and where you end and where your employer then takes over.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to be able to know what those boundaries are. And I mean, even, you just mentioning that some of your clients did contact you while you were on maternity leave. And I'm sure, I mean, it was like, out of a good place that they did that. But let's then talk about the policies within the workplace. So that's more around the procedures, the process, and those are tailored to the employer and the organization that you work for.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you? What types of processes or policies that you needed to make yourself aware of in preparation for your maternity leave?
Yeah. And I must say, I think an observation that I've made is that as employees in the workplace, I don't think we read enough. We don't read enough. We don't know our rights enough. And this comes to me as well. There's so many situations throughout my journey where if I was not married to a lawyer, I would have been bamboozled because I just did not know any better. But it also comes from a lack of information because the information's there. In fact, from a lack of accessing information. The information's there, but we're just not accessing it. So in the maternity leave journey, before having that conversation with your employer, look at what your policies say. Is it paid or is it unpaid maternity leave? A lot of the times we expect that it's paid, but it's based on your employer. Your employer could do a fully paid maternity period of 4 months. It could be a partially paid maternity period. It could be an unpaid maternity period. All three are valid according to our legislation.
Sure.
And I'm not an expert in this at all. I've done my research and asked a lot, but all three are valid in terms of our legislation. When you've got an employer that offers you paid maternity leave, so according to the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, your employer can give you 4 months, four consecutive months of unpaid maternity leave. A lot of employers would have maternity benefits. Where you've got maternity benefits, also check a work back period. Because a lot of the times we'll think, great, I can take 4 months maternity leave and then I can resign once I get back. But there's a work back clause for that employer having given you that 4 months paid maternity leave. Sometimes the work back is 2 months, sometimes it's a year. Make sure that you are checking out what your policies are saying so that you can plan out what your career moves look like.
Sure.
If it's unpaid or if it's partially paid, you do have the option of approaching the UIF, which is the Unemployment Insurance Fund. The UIF offers you up to 66% of your salary based on your earnings for your maternity leave cover for a 4-month period. And it's so important to check whether or not you are eligible for this. If you've been contributing to UIF each month, then you are eligible for it. For contractors, if you've been contributing, you are eligible as well. It becomes a bit trickier for freelancers or informal workers. Unless you've voluntarily contributed, you may not be eligible for UIF.
Sure.
So it's so important that you can check what are my rights either within my employer or from a government perspective, because the UIF is funded by the government. And how do I access these rights? If you need to go the UIF route because your employer does not pay maternity leave, it's so important that you apply with the Department of Employment and Labour. It's so important that you submit the necessary documents. One of those include a medical certificate to prove that you are expecting your ID, bank details. There's a specific form as well. And it's so important that you do this early enough. The last minute shenanigans will stress you out when you are due to give birth and you don't yet have funding that you need to sustain you over the 4-month period.
Sure. It's quite a lot to do, quite a lot to digest also, I think, for expectant mothers. So with all of that, would you recommend that, expectant mothers are in consultation with either other mothers, with a lawyer, with an HR person to just walk them through the journey, because it can be a lot, right? And pregnancy can take a toll on you mentally, emotionally, physically. So you might not actually have the bandwidth and capacity to go through all of that, right? So what would your advice be around just trying to navigate understanding your rights from an employer perspective, but also according to South African legislation?
I'd say that there's perhaps 3 key aspects, and I think you have mentioned them all. One is, if you are employed, definitely when you have shared with your employer, when you've read your policies, sit down with HR, sit down with your lead and say, can you just walk me through these policies to make sure that I've got the right understanding? If you can get someone else to also have a look at these to make sure that your understanding is correct, that's so important. We just don't know enough about our rights in the workplace, and it shoots us in the foot each time. Secondly, if you are going the UIF route because your company does not pay maternity leave or you're a contractor, also make sure that you are going onto the relevant websites to do your research. The one thing I really appreciate about our country is how a lot of the information that is so critical is in bite-sized chunks for us to understand. And I think particularly the Department of Employment and Labour has done a really good job in explaining UIF to expectant mothers. The third aspect, which is a really important one that you mentioned, is about mom groups, community groups. Those groups have been so instrumental in my own journey. And the funny thing is that I hate WhatsApp groups, but I find that there's a WhatsApp group I'm part of called Clueless Mums that's been incredibly helpful. Whether it is about legal matters, whether it is about your baby has a rash, it's been so helpful to just get that mom group support. But also I'm grateful that we were able to do antenatal classes. And from those antenatal classes, there were a lot of mums that could support us as well. I do have the added benefit of being married to a lawyer. And I know that, that access is so helpful. But there are a number of organizations and firms that do pro bono law that can assist with various pieces of information. There's a lot of legal clinics that we can access to get information. So I'd say definitely research what tools are within reach that can get you the information that you need. And then when you've got that, plan out a maternity plan that works for your best interest.
Sure.
Sometimes as mums, we stress, and I think as women as a whole, we stress. And we often would overthink for the sake of the company. But in that moment when you're expecting, you and your unborn child are the most important people.
Sure.
And so for as long as you've got your maternity plan done and you've communicated it, that is within your scope. Everything else after that, your employer should work out. But your pay during your maternity leave is your problem. Sure. And get that sorted as soon as possible. Because you're right that as you advance in your trimesters, it's not easy. Basic things become even more difficult to do. So the earlier you can get that sorted for yourself, the better.
Sure. So let's talk more about the emotional and mental preparation. We've done the legalities, the policies. Now it's about just mentally preparing yourself in that transition of being a professional, career-driven woman. You mentioned that you're a type A, so yes. I can imagine what that transition was like for you, from being fully dedicated to your work and having to make space for this new role and prepare yourself emotionally and mentally. What did that look like for you?
You've said it right. It's definitely a mental and emotional shift. I've always been very ambitious. I've always been incredibly driven. And one of the aspects that has been holding me back from having a child is, will I compromise on my career ambition? My husband has wanted us to have a child for as long as I can remember. He's always been so incredible with kids. There's a time we had friends visit us and the baby yawned, and he knew that you should close the baby's mouth when it yawns. I was like to him, what are you doing? He's like, no, everyone knows this. I'm like, I don't know this. And that showed me that he's so ready, and he's always been so ready. But I appreciate the patience that he had, because for me, it was really trying to figure out when is the best time in my career for me to have a child without losing the momentum that I've built so far.
Sure.
So it was difficult, I'll be honest, because there's a lot of shifts, there's a lot of insecurities. Women already grapple with the imposter syndrome. I grapple with crazy levels of imposter syndrome. And so I kept asking myself, will I have my role when I get back? Will I still be relevant to my clients when I get back? Will I still be a great project manager when I get back? And I think in going through that journey, it's so interesting because I stressed about it for so long. And when my son was born, I got to a stage where I'd done all the transitions I had to do, and I was like, I'm just going to be in this period of surrender. And I speak about God a lot because I feel like God is my compass. God has been so incredible in my life. And when I got to that period of surrender, it was also because I was stressing so much that I was starting to have complexities in my pregnancy that were not necessary. And one thing the doctor that the doctor communicated to me is that he's seeing a lot more women my age when we are pregnant. We are so stressed out with work that we have complications in our pregnancy that can be completely avoided. And that for me was a wake-up call that I'm stressing so much that I'm compromising my child, I'm compromising my health, and I need to just surrender to the process. So I had to surrender. I had to take a step back. I had to stop wanting to control everything and literally just leave it in God's hands. The interesting part about all that stress is that the moment my son was born, it fell away because he was the priority.
Sure.
His well-being, my recovery was then the priority. And it's so interesting. And a friend of mine, we laughed about it, that we had so many plans on maternity leave. We were going to start businesses. We were going to study. I was like, I'm going to do a Harvard course, the Harvard online program.
While you're nursing a newborn.
That was my goal. I'm like, I'm going to have so much time. I'm going to do it. And none of that materialized because I underestimated the amount of work that was required.
Yeah, understandably so.
A lot of people think maternity leave is leave.
Yes.
Like when people say to me, I hope you're enjoying your leave. I'm like, it's not leave.
Yes.
I'm working.
I'm hands-on.
It's a different type of leave. It's literally 24/7. At least at work you can knock off. It was 24/7.
Yes.
And so it's a different type of leave. It's a different type of work. It's not actually leave. A lot of people would see what's above the surface, which is the cute photos of a newborn, which is what we post on Instagram. But there's so many emotions underneath that. There's sleepless nights. Is your milk supply coming in?
Sure.
Are you going to breastfeed? Are you going to formula feed? The judgment that comes from other moms, depending on the option that you pick. It's so difficult. And the transitions that come in parenting as well, on the relationship dynamics. So there's so much that you're experiencing that you surrender yourself to the process. And in that stage, you just want to be the best mom you can be. The interesting part I felt is that I was excited to go back to work because I was like, this is challenging on a different level, but I also want to be intellectually stimulated again.
Sure.
And in that transition back to work, the first few weeks were really difficult. And there are some moments that are still very difficult because on the one hand, I've got mom guilt for not spending as much time with my son as I did when I was on maternity leave. On the other hand, at work, I've got imposter syndrome because I've been out of the game for 6 months and am I still as smart as I thought I was? And in navigating those emotions, it's tough. But I think 9 months down the line, where I am now is to say I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still learning that I can't do everything at 100%, and my personality makes me want to be 100% mom, 100% wife, 100% employee, and that's not sustainable. On some days, I'll be 50% mom, 30% wife, 20% employee, and that's good enough. And I'm learning that. I'm learning to accept that and to be comfortable with that, and that doesn't make me any less in any space.
Sure.
But the one point of assurance that I can share with any other moms is that you think that becoming a mom would make you less of a career woman. I find that it's made me more of a career woman. Before, I was doing things to build a legacy for me. Now I'm building a legacy for my son and my future kids. And that's lit a fire under me that I've never experienced before. I have been the most productive at work in my entire life. I'm a lot more efficient because I just don't want to waste time. I'm online from 8:30 in the morning. My cutoff is 5 p.m. because my nanny knocks off. And then it's time for my son. It's time for my husband. It's time for my family. If I need to work again, it will be after we've put my son to sleep, we've had bath time, we've had supper time, after my husband and I have caught up on our day, we've watched a show on Netflix, we've bonded, then I can work from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then I go back to sleep. So it's made me incredibly efficient. It's also made me take a lot less nonsense. Before I'd be very polite, I think as Black women are raised to be. I'm still polite, but now I can tell you that actually I don't agree with this. And it's so interesting. My husband laughs at me. He's like, our roles have switched.
Yes.
He's like, Omkulu's mom is a new beast because Omkulu's mom will tell you like it is because it's so important. And so, I mean, I just think of my productivity. In March, I had 4 speaking opportunities that I executed with ease while balancing a baby because of that drive for excellence and leaving a legacy for my family. Just yesterday, I sold a deal worth 3 million rand. And it felt so good. And I could celebrate with my family afterwards. And that's why I say I was so worried that I'd become less of a career woman. But I feel that there's something in my being that has switched after having my child. I'm even more driven than I was before. I'm learning to set better boundaries. I'm learning to take care of myself, which means that I can take care of my family, which means that I can pour into work. I'm also learning to make career shifts that will advance me at a better pace. So what does my career progression look like right now? What does my salary look like? What will the earnings look like in the next few years? Is that enough to contribute to the different schools we want to send him to? Is that enough for our home? There's different conversations that are happening, and I'm so grateful to be in this space. So, Mama, everything will be okay.
I'm almost tempted to just, wrap up this portion of our conversation there. But I just want to talk about, women who might be struggling with returning back to work for some of the reasons that you have highlighted.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them in terms of just readying themselves? Because, you only found out when you got back in that you are more driven, more ambitious, and more capable than you were before. But for someone who is just anxious, who is worried about being discriminated against, and also who might fear job security, what would you say to them?
I think 3 things, right? The first is really think about what your entry back into work would look like. And that's one of the things I feel like I could have done a lot better. Do you want to work remotely for a certain period while you're adjusting? Do you want to work partial days whereby you're still working your 40 hours a week, but you are starting your days at 4 a.m. and knocking off 8 hours later so that you can spend time with your child? Do you want to work part-time? There's some moms that I know that when they return to work, they said, I want to work 4-day weeks so that on the Friday I can spend time with my family. And those options are available to us. Of course, in the first 2 options with the remote working and the flexi hours, you're still being paid your full salary. If you go the partial route, you then lose 1 day of salary.
Sure.
But really map out what the transition should look like for you. I'm grateful that we've got a balance of remote and office working. So the first few months, I'd only be in the office once a week. Once we got into the swing of things, I can do twice a week. But that's my maximum. And it's important because I do want to be home for my family. The second thing to really think about is that mom guilt is there. And the first day I went to work, I cried because I was leaving my son at home. But I'm grateful that in my maternity leave, I had times where I'd go for outings with a friend. I had times, the one day I went to speak at a conference for 2 hours. And that helped me to transition back a lot quicker. And that also helps you to trust your support system.
Sure.
To trust that you don't have to helicopter, things will go well.
Yeah.
The third thing I'd say is to really make sure that you are creating your plan back. So to say when you get back, and this is the option that you've got in your maternity leave. Some moms decide to go cold turkey, which is what I thought I would do, that I'm on maternity leave, don't contact me about anything. But then I got a bit itchy, so would have a few chats here and there. Some moms want to be updated about things, and it depends on your appetite and what your concerns are about job security. The most important thing to note, and this is what my people lead will share with me, is that as a returning mom, as an expecting mom, you are at that stage the most protected from a labor law perspective. Sure. Your employer cannot dismiss you in that period. That would be considered unfair dismissal, it would be considered discriminatory, and you have got the Labor Relations Act protecting you. If that happens, you have got the CCMA that will protect you. So in that period back, you are technically the most protected employee. And so recognize that and also plan what your transition back looks like. There is also some pressure when you get back to want to jump into the way things were before. And that's a mistake I made, where I got back and the first day I started on a project that had already started running, and now I'm catching up. I already have imposter syndrome. I've been out of the game for 6 months. I'm catching up on a project. Everyone knows about the project. I'm the only Black person. I'm the only one from the continent. And it was so difficult. And I battled a lot. And what helped me was to share with the team, to say, team, I'm just coming back. I'll be honest, I'm feeling really out of depth. I'm feeling really insecure. Can you just bear with me? I'm not going to have all the answers. Can we work through this together? Can you talk me through the first phase of work? And I had to do a lot of catching up. And it's only, I'd say I started the project in Jan. It's only in March where I felt like I've got this. I've got the hang of things. So I think being patient with yourself, being compassionate with yourself is so important.
That's a beautiful way to just end off the segment of our conversation. That self-compassion really goes a long way, because you really are learning to be a mom for the first time.
Yes.
Right? And even if it's the second time or the third or the fourth, the journey is always different, and there's always new things to learn along the way. So self-compassion is key. All right.
Absolutely.
So it wouldn't be one of our podcast episodes if we didn't have the last 3 bonus questions, mostly around resources and tools that, you've used to navigate the world of work. So what book, podcast, or article have you read or listened to that shifted your perspective about work?
Sure. There is so much information out there, which I'm grateful for. I think the moment you are an expecting mom, your Instagram algorithms change and you just see, and it's so interesting, it comes with your journey. You initially see the newborn stage, the settling in stage, and you get onto the returning to work stage. So I'd say, there's been various pages on Instagram that have been really, really helpful in my journey. Having conversations with other moms, I think just honest conversations with moms that recently returned to work was so important. Another key book, one that I've read year on out, has been The Alchemist. It's not about motherhood, but I feel like Santiago's journey teaches you to be comfortable in uncertainty.
Sure.
And teaches you that we're often searching for gold, but that gold is right in front of us. It's your family. It's the fact that your work is there. I'd also say that the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, is so helpful, because they do cover some segments of when you're returning to work, what are conversations to have, what does that look like? But I think for me, the biggest tool, the biggest blessing has been having a really strong support system. And I'm incredibly grateful to have a really supportive husband. I think having a supportive husband has allowed us to discuss things, to unpack things, to plan. It was him that was like, you don't have to head back to work in November. It's the end of the year. Why don't you take off until Jan? And me being a workaholic, wanted to keep working until that point. But just to have him as a great sounding board has been incredibly helpful.
Sure.
At work, when I'm battling imposter syndrome, to be like, honey, this is how I'm feeling. I'm not feeling like I'm capable anymore. And just being affirmed in that instance has been so helpful. So I'd say it's a bag of tools.
Yes.
It's the people around you. Yes. It's the books. It's the social media. It's the mommy groups. The mommy groups are so helpful when we're all heading back to work, because a lot of us in our antenatal classes had our kids around the same time. Everyone's like, this is how I'm feeling. Oh, my first day. I don't know what to do. And just being able to support each other and affirm each other has been so helpful. So definitely tap on the various resources, and community plays a huge role in your journey.
Sure. And what does wellness in the workplace look like for you?
Work-life integration.
Work-life integration. Okay. Buzzword I've heard a couple of times.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that before we wrap up.
I feel like balance is so difficult to achieve because I don't feel like, because life is not linear, nothing will be balanced ever. So I feel like when we talk about integration, it is, how do you integrate your work into your life. And that would mean for me, at least for me, it looks like knowing that I want to stay healthy. So I go to gym at 6:30 every morning. I am either at the office or I'm working from home. The moment I get back home from, let's say, the gym, I spend some time with my son before I start the workday. Once our nanny comes at 7:30, I can then hand him over, and then I can get ready for work, and then I start working. If I've got some gaps in between meetings, I will go and play with him. When I started, I thought every lunchtime I'm going to play with him, but it doesn't always work like that. So gaps in between meetings, I will play with him. When it's 4 p.m., that's when I start my multitasking. So I'm prepping his meals and prepping supper while I'm on Teams calls. Our nanny knocks off at 5. I have a hard stop at 5. Spend time with my son. Hubby gets back. We all spend time. We lie in the playpen. We just enjoy the moments. Bath time, supper time, put him to sleep, spend time with hubby. And then if I need to work, I work after that. So that is what a typical day looks like. And I'm grateful that, it doesn't seem balanced. It doesn't seem perfect, but it works for me. And I feel like that's what work-life integration looks like for me.
Sure. And it would look different for different people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And lastly, any closing comments or remarks about our topic, about work-life integration, about being a career woman, working mom, whatever it is that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah. I'd say for working moms, don't let the world make you choose. Like you have to choose between being a good mom or being a good employee. It's so possible to do both. I say that as a new mom. I say that as a new mom that is in touch with so many more experienced moms that have got 15-year-olds, moms that have got 30-year-olds. I've seen them balance, or rather I've seen them manage a successful career and building a beautiful family.
Sure.
So don't let the world make you feel like you have to choose.
Farai, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for just also the personal sharing and insight. I think that always adds a bit of color to conversations rather than just talking about the black and white of the legalities or policies around such topics. So thank you so much for your time and just patience as well to making this episode happen. And thank you for watching. And if you're listening, thank you for tuning in once again. This is another episode of Wellness in the Workplace. Do follow us on all platforms and social media. We will catch you on the next episode. My name is Mbali Mziane. Bye-bye.